Democratic Senator Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire. Thank you so much for being here. It's nice to see you.
Nice to be with you.
So far, every time this has come for a vote on the Senate floor, you have voted no on advancing the Republican bill, which is to keep it open for 7 weeks and do nothing else. The next vote, which is going to happen in an hour or so, how will you vote?
You know, I'm hoping that people will be able to come together around the concerns that Democrats have expressed, not just the president's announcements of layoffs and the way he's treating federal employees, but what's going to happen with the health care of so many Americans if we don't address the premium tax credits that are available to help people afford their health insurance. And that's been the sticking point for me, for my colleagues on the Democratic side. What we wanted is everyone to recognize that this is a very real issue. We just heard from the Kaiser Family Foundation that even 57% of MAGA voters say they want to see these tax credits extended. So this is not a Democrat or a Republican issue. It's an issue that affects everybody who needs access to health care, and that's been the sticking point.
You are retiring at the end of your term. You have the unique freedom to act without political repercussions. Not saying that you have thought about that entirely with your votes in your storied career, but given that reality, how are you approaching what is happening differently? And I will say that you have been called the shutdown whisperer, as perhaps the person who can find some middle ground.
Well, I wish that were the case. I think in order to find that middle ground, it takes people on both sides of the aisle. And I think the good news is that people are still talking. I think the bad news is that we're not seeing the leadership on both sides really willing to sit down and negotiate. And I think that's what it's going to take. It's unfortunate that President Trump didn't call congressional leaders together until the Monday, you know, about 24 hours before funding was due to run out, because this kind of a negotiation takes everybody at the table. And the fact that he is now talking about firing more federal employees, which he's really been doing since day one when he took office, but that he's talking about halting funding that's going to blue states, states that have Democratic elected officials. That's not what the American people want to see. What the American people want to see is that we're going to come together, that we are going to address the challenges that face this country. And I think we ought to be able to keep the government open and provide health care that people are counting on to make sure they can keep their families safe and secure.
You just said that you are disappointed with the leadership on both sides of the aisle. I'm guessing you have a more direct line to your Democratic leader, to Chuck Schumer, than John Thune, although I'm sure you talked to both of them. What do you want them to do differently? What do you want Chuck Schumer to do differently in order to achieve what you just said?
What I want both of them to do is to start negotiating, to stop making statements in public and grandstanding on partisan issues, and to talk about where there are areas of common ground. I think one of those areas that Senator Thune talked about and Senator Schumer's talked about is let's get back to a regular appropriations process. We have bills, excuse me, 8 bills that have passed the Appropriations Committee in the Senate overwhelmingly with bipartisan votes. So let's bring those bills to the floor. Let's get a commitment, and let's get Speaker Johnson to make a commitment that he's actually going to take up these bills. We have three bills that have already passed both houses that we ought to be able to come to agreement on very quickly if people are willing to sit down and do that. Let's get those done.
Senator, I do want to just sort of push back on not just you, but sort of all the Democrats on the notion of using this bill to deal with health care. I'm not saying that what you're saying about the Obama health care subsidies is very real. They don't expire until the end of the year. And what Republicans are arguing is that, and also that Democrats historically always want a clean CR, in regular English, that's to keep the government running at the levels that it already was. And they're right, that is historically what Democrats have wanted. Why do this here now?
Because there is real urgency about those premium tax credits, because it's correct that they don't expire until the end of December, but what is not being factored in is that insurance companies are setting the rates now. November 1st, the marketplace for the Affordable Care Act opens up and people start enrolling. And for the last 4 years, we've had record enrollment in healthcare. For the first time in this country in years, people are able to access healthcare at a cost they can afford, mostly because of those premium tax credits. So if we don't do something before November the 1st, then people are going to get their insurance rates, they're going to be unaffordable. We know that if we wait until December, we're going to have 1.5 million more people who are going to get kicked off their health insurance. We know it's going to cost the federal government $10 billion more. The nonpartisan CBO has said that to us. So let's act now. There's no reason we need to wait.